You done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias.
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What looking at you, give me funny lad.
Grammy Award winner Maya joins us.
How are you?
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat, Brad Gilmore.
And he joins us right now. Here we are, ESPN 97.5, 92.5. We have a special guest joining us right now. We're talking about Game Theory Season 2. Brand new episodes start Friday, January 20th at 10 Central Time, 11 if you're on the East Coast on HBO. Bomani Jones joins us. Bomani, how we doing?
Hey, man, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. Well, look, congrats on Season 2. First off, let's talk about it. Game Theory. This is a show that I think it's as much a sports analysis show as it is a late night comedy program in the sense of the vibe of it. Am I off in that characterization?
No, I think that's exactly what we are going for. Like what this show really became, and what I realized early this was going to be is, at first we were kind of playing with some different ideas that were probably more the business of other people than myself. And then we decided, look, people come to me generally because they want to hear what I think about things. So we start off with, hey, what do you think about insert thing here? Boom. Well, now how can we illustrate that as lushly and in as entertaining a fashion as we possibly can? And so we got a team of comedy writers that work on that. We got our news producers. We got the graphics team. We got everybody else. And it's just, all right, we start here. How do we build this out as best as we possibly can? And so humor has always been a part of what I've done. But I'm an amateur at it in that regard. Like I got some professionals giving me some backup.
Is there ever like because everybody who knows Bomani Jones or have seen you on, I mean, you're on all over television, but even if they see you on CNN or ESPN or wherever, they know that you're an opinionated individual and you're going to speak your mind. But when you add the comedy flavor to it, it almost makes those, and I guess this is more of a commentary on why comedy is so important to get a message across. It makes any message, I think, a little bit more palatable, no matter how controversial. Am I right?
Yeah, and I also think the biggest thing about it is that it's in the natural rhythm of life, right? So there's a strategic element that you could talk about, which is that it can soften things to make it easier. But humor doesn't necessarily have to be soft, right? Like sometimes it's going to bite at people. But like for people who have listened to me on radio and in podcast form, I've never really been too much about forcing the humor into anything, but the humor just happens to come up. Even in things that aren't the most comfortable in the world to talk about, it's going to be there. And so what I think happens for a lot of people is when they're talking about things that are serious, they kind of feel the need to establish their credibility, and you establish your credibility by seeming serious. But the truth is, if you're talking about any of these topics and nobody else is around, chances are you find it's a joke. And the jokes are normally not that inappropriate, right? Like I know what you can and can't say on TV. You know what I mean? Like I ain't lost my mind. But if it's there, you might as well take it. Like, nobody's mad about having a little fun.
And it's HBO. And from everything I know, and I've talked to other people who are on the network, they kind of let you do what you do. They trust in the talent that they've hired.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. It's not simply that they trust in the talent that they hire, but they insist that the talent that they hire establish the show as being their own. Like with this one, it was interesting because the idea and everything had been sold before I got on. So I did get on to somebody else's show to do the pilot, and there really wasn't a lot of time for me to be in there kicking stuff around. But after that, it was like, hey, this has got to be your show, which is funny because I didn't know what I wanted my show to be. Y'all called me. I had to gradually figure that sort of thing out. But then once you're there, it's get on or get gone if you don't want to buy into what the talent wants to do.
Well, again, the show is going to debut again season 2 this Friday on HBO. So what are there any differences like setup wise or formatting for season 2, or is it kind of what we loved about season 1 again?
No, the changes are probably more subtle in some ways, but I think will be impactful. Like one thing that we're trying to do is, and I am probably at my best just going off the top of my head and rolling. Like you get the energy, you get the ups and downs, you get everything and the analysis. And that's harder to do when you got a television set up where you got to run stuff by lawyers and everything else. You know what I mean? Like that's not as easy. So what we're doing is trying to factor in more things where I just got room to go, right? We got a bigger writer's room this year, so we're going to be able to have more support to make sure the essays and everything are as tight as they can be. Like, we didn't fundamentally change anything, but hopefully we improved everything that we had been doing before.
Again, new episodes debut this Friday on HBO. That's January 20th at 10 Central Time. I want to ask Bomani because, again, we're here in the great city and state of Houston, Texas, and we can't seem to ever have a solid sports franchise be great for a prolonged period of time. I think that the Houston Astros are breaking that stigma for the city of Houston, but going to the Houston Texans, they're at the opposite end of the spectrum, letting go of Lovie Smith. I saw you on CNN talking about this particular instance, and you described the institution as a dumpster fire, which I tend to agree with you. What do we think about the future of the Texans organization? They're talking about hiring Sean Payton. I mean, what are your overall thoughts? How do we get back on track?
Well, for me, the only cause for optimism at this moment is that Jack Easterby is gone, right? Like that was the one, right? How toxic did Easterby ultimately prove to be? Because Cal McNair, I mean, from what I can tell, they got that one McNair son that runs the actual business because he's the guy that's qualified to do stuff like that. You give the other kids a football team because anybody can make money running a football team. Now, ownership matters so much more in the NFL than I think that people realize, and what the trickle-down effect is into how that, everything that's on the ground. They seem to have an ownership problem. But with Easterby out of there, you at least have a chance to get better. And there are teams that at least play halfway decent in spite of ownership all the time, right? So the problem I have with the Texans, for where I am, is, man, I can name like 4 people that play for that team. And I don't know how that happened. To say what you want about the Texans, but the last 10 years or so were filled with big names. That ain't the case no more.
I mean, yeah, at one point you had the J.J. Watts, the Deshaun Watsons, the DeAndre Hopkins, and now, yeah, you're right. It's actually similar and akin to the Houston Rockets right now, which was a star destination for a period of time, and now we're in a rebuilding phase, and you can't name 3 of them, let alone the entire roster of individuals. But going back to the Texans, specifically Lovie Smith, winning that game on the outs is what a lot of people said, man, why did you do that? To me, I didn't really get caught up in all of that. But do you think that his firing was justified, or was anybody who took over that position going to end up just like Lovie Smith in a losing situation?
Well, what I don't think any of us have a great answer for is why exactly he got fired. And that's what causes me to hesitate too much about casting too many aspersions about whether or not he should or should not have kept the job. I don't think that he lost the job because they won that last game. Think
Agreed.
about this. Let's say they had lost that game and then wound up with the number 1 pick, and then they fire him. What's the easiest thing in the world to say subsequent to that? Well, they did just lose to Jeff Saturday in the Indianapolis Colts. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like he was just going to get fired. It's hard for me to say that he shouldn't have been fired when it's hard for me to say that he should have been hired. But I don't think that they were going to be able to hire a coach that anybody else in the NFL would have hired when they did it. I just don't think so.
Last thing for you, because I'm just curious. Speaking of Houston franchises, we are going to be getting an XFL team. What do you think about the long-term future of the XFL? It's failed twice. Dwayne Johnson has kind of ownership and control over it. Do you think that it can prove to be a successful spring football league?
Well, the question I always have when somebody starts up one of these leagues is, like, how long are you willing to give this? Because the idea that you're not making money after 1 year and then you shut it down, which we have seen happen with these other leagues, doesn't make any sense. Like, if you're going to make something like this work, that's probably a 20-something year project. Now, are the people involved in it, do they see this as a 20-something year project? The answer is probably no, in which case, yeah, it's going to wind up failing. The other thing is this. Spring football just doesn't have good enough players. And so our belief that, hey, man, well, people will watch any football you put out there. They'll watch any bowl game that you put out there, like with this level of players. But that's just once. They're not going to get invested in doing this week after week after week, I don't think. So I get the idea. There's such a taste for football. You can throw on the Pro Bowl. You can throw on this. You can throw on that. And people will watch it. But I don't know what it's going to take for you to make people care. And I think that's the thing that takes a long time if it's ever going to happen.
Game Theory Season 2 debuts this Friday, January the 20th at 10 Central Time on HBO and HBO Max. Bomani Jones joins us, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to your native Houstonians. And best of luck with you and much success, my brother.
Thank you, man. You have a good one.
You too, brother.
Hurry up, tape running out.